Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, co-editor-in-chief with Retail Insider. Joining me today is Annie Nersessian, who is owner of VMID. Thanks for joining us today, Annie.
My pleasure, Mario. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the kind of layouts and displays of retail stores these days and how important that is. And let me just start by asking you, how can retailers increase their return on investment, for the spaces that they're in, and make their stores more sales productive?
So it's really important to first understand your own layout and understand how each area functions for you. Knowing right off the bat, window displays are super important. Even if you don't have a display area, if you have a vision into your store, that then acts as the window display. So that's very, very critical. The next section that's very important is as soon as you walk in, seeing that feature zone. What is the store you're selling there? And what is the urgency that you're communicating to your customers? Other areas might be similar in terms of, let's say, POP areas, the last opportunity that customers have to shop. That cash desk area is super important to see what are the add-on items that you can have. There are definitely some differences from retailer to retailer, but whatever it is, it's very important to kind of observe and map out how your customers are shopping in your store so that you know how to make the most of it and allocate each type of category accordingly.
Now, has this area of retail always been there, but or has it taking on more importance in recent years?
I would say both. Back in the day, it was more about just displays. And to me, surprisingly, many people do still think that visual merchandising is all about displays, when in fact, in addition to that, it's very much about how you are organizing and categorizing and space planning your section. So as soon as you have any products that you are featuring for sale, that you are merchandising whether you intend to or not. So it's important to be aware of what visual merchandising is because you are doing it as soon as you're presenting your product. So it's important to do it effectively. What's maybe getting more urgent is creating more of an incentive to come and shop in person. So knowing that e-commerce is definitely more very popular these days, a lot of people do still prefer to shop in stores, but we also need more incentive, meaning what visual merchandising consists of is not necessarily just about laying out the products, but also carving out spaces to create those experiences in stores. So that's become more critical.
Now, when you look at displays and layout, here's a question that caught me off guard because I'm based in Calgary and a little while back Uniqlo came to Calgary, right? And the one store had the checkout at the back, and I thought that is odd. And it's an odd placement for a checkout. And have you seen it? First of all, have you seen much of that? And then what is the purpose to having it at the back of the store as opposed to the front?
So I find every retailer kind of has an idea of where the cash desk absolutely needs to go. And usually when I'm working on the space, it is set where it is. I don't really have any flexibility in that. But I'm going to assume that the reason for something to be all the way in the back is because they want to prioritize selling space for the front of the store. The cash desk is such an operational item that they probably don't want to put that in a very important section so that they're prioritizing the actual customer experience and selling the products as well.
What about the physical layout? How important it is that to make it simple and easily navigated, I guess, in a store.
It's super important because you can imagine that you probably don't have a salesperson for every single customer that walks into the store. So be able to support customers to help them shop as independently as possible. You have to make it intuitive for them to shop the space, knowing they'll know where to expect to find the products that they need to go, what products actually make sense together. grouping products that belong together in terms of usage to be shown together as well, so that it's easy to understand the products, easy to add on yourself, easy to know what the selling points are of those products, and basically everything that you would say in a conversation, knowing, of course, the staff members are super important too, but they would also be a bonus so that you are in a way be able to serve every single customer who's walking in the way that you've presented the store.
Are there any trends, Annie, that you're seeing right now that are kind of big in this kind of area of retail?
I would say it definitely goes back to that experience. Not that experiential retail is super new, but it's definitely become more and more important to have enough space to be able to carve out a space for that experience. It doesn't need to be a huge amount of space. And what that experience means could be something very different from retailer to retailer, whether it's technology or something you're doing in terms of customer service for your customers or like a marketing event type of activation, but really just being able to create those experiences in addition to the product presentation. Omni-channel integration is definitely very important. Again, not new, but only becoming more important to be able to see that e-commerce and in-person shopping are tied to each other. They're not competing with each other, where one is just the in-person interactivity and the other could be where people are cashing out, but that doesn't mean that one is taking over the other. They act hand in hand. So I would say those are the most important ones that we continue to see becoming more and more important.
So what is when you look at inside a store, uh, how, what are the elements that transform a spot that is maybe just a shelving space or a stock room type space into a spot that is actually a selling place?
It's definitely the way that you are making it more approachable to customers. So if you've just simply put products there without any thought, then it acts more like a stock room. So where I am having to have customer service to be able to shop the space. Rather, if you have intentionally put some of the things as more focal, you've displayed more, featured them more, knowing that this is more of a priority display, incorporating any sort of signage to communicate the key selling points or even displayed it in a way that I'm able to see all the design elements that make it obvious for me why I would need that product. So it's a lot of it has to do with displaying, but also the types of products that you are grouping together so that I know how to shop it rather than just show products that are there for storage.
Now, I don't know if this is the case or not, but maybe you could talk about it. But I'm looking at like small independent retailers, right? The sort of the mom and pop shops out there. Like, did they spend much time thinking about this, or is it just out of their realm because they're so small?
I think as independent shop owners or as smaller entrepreneurs, they probably do spend quite a lot of time. Those that are aware of the importance do probably spend a lot of time, but maybe don't have as much time to actually execute because they have smaller resources or fewer resources. So they might do what they can. But another problem is when you see the same space day in and day out, you stop noticing things about it. So you lose the freshness. You no longer see how dated or aged one section looks, rather than if you have a fresh set of eyes coming to it. So I do think it's important to, when you are an owner, to see where you are needed most, and you're probably wearing many hats. So be able to learn how to delegate those tasks to your staff members.
I'm curious. One question that slipped my mind. What does VMID stand for?
I get that sometimes, and it's funny. I named my business VMID thinking it's super obvious, but it's not. VM stands for visual merchandising, and ID being identity. So basically, being able to create that brand image for yourself through visual merchandising.
Right. And the last question I have for you, when you look at the retail landscape out there, are there any companies that strike you as your retailers that are doing it right and doing it well?
That's a tricky one. I would say there are some that always stand out to everybody in terms of visual merchandising. It's like, let's say Anthropology, Free People, those types of environments that are super, super inspiring. That doesn't mean they're the most successful in every aspect, of course, but I think it also depends on location. So when you go to malls like Yorkdale Mall, you usually see the absolute epitome or the flagship version of every retailer. So you might find that one location isn't doing well at all, but you'll go to a mall like Yorkdale, which really elevates its standards. So there's more pressure to have that upkeep for sure. I even find sometimes some of the stores in Scarborough Town Center, and I grew up there. It's very different from what it looked like when I was growing up, but now it's nice to see that some of those stores, like even Zara and H&M, are often very well maintained compared to their other locations.
One. Well, thanks so much, Annie, for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for Mario for having me. It's always a pleasure to be speaking to Retail Insider.
Wonderful. That was Annie Nersessian, who is owner of BMID. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, co-editor in chief of Retail Insider. Thanks for joining us today.